Hello everybody, welcome to another vlog. Today we are doing something very exciting. We are having a high tea at home on our balcony and Ryan's done a stellar job. I will show you in a second how fantastic it looks. And I've made a marble cake, which is the first time I've adapted my recipe for marble cake to be a vegan version, and it seems to have come out quite well. So let me show you our little setup. How lovely a little high tea looks. We've got all sorts of sandwiches here. What do we have, love?
We've got salmon, cream cheese and cucumber sandwiches.
Scones, jam, cheese. Got some haute cabaret wine. We've got some carrot and pecan nuts muffins and the marble cakes that I did mention as well, which looks pretty good. So post high tea we've decided we're going to do a little book chat, so cheers love.
Cheers, Rose.
This is going to be a wine drinking book chat. I was just very lucky that I found myself a husband that loves to read as much as I do. So often we end up reading together. It's like something that we actually enjoy, I think, you know, sitting around and reading together, and we often end up reading similar books as well, so that's quite nice. Not always, but sometimes. So I thought today we would go through our reading list for 2020, considering now we're halfway through the year, so we can talk about half the books that we've read this year. How many books have you read this year?
So using Audible as well, I've
Yep.
gone through 25 books this year so far.
Are you kidding?
So it's not bad, 25 books. And how many have you read?
I've only read 8 this year. I'm on my 9th one at the moment.
Sure.
I'm a very slow reader, but I don't know, I guess with the wedding and whatnot, I was spending my free time on the wedding rather than reading. But I'm back at it now, and especially with lockdown and whatnot, and I'm not driving anyway because I'm working from home, so my Audible's taken a decline while yours has taken an increase. But I'm still enjoying reading. I'm getting very into it at the moment, and I've got lots to talk about actually.
We've both read Atomic Habits.
Yes, so I've got Atomic Habits here actually. So Ryan read it first and then he recommended it for me, and I read it and I absolutely loved it. So there's certain principles in this book that I've actually applied to my day-to-day life. If you haven't read Atomic Habits, do you want to explain a little bit about what it is?
He just gives you some methods that you can use to try reinforce good habits and let go of bad habits. Some of the things that stood out for me is habit stacking.
Yeah, I love that.
Which I think I still use. So like how that works is you think of something that you want to do, like a habit that you're not yet doing, and you stack that habit to something that you are doing because it's already a habit.
Obviously it's a non-fiction book, so it's just very focused on making sure that you're productive. The author, quite interestingly, is very against setting goals, but more focused on setting strategies towards attaining your better self. So that's quite an interesting take on things, because I've always been a goal setter, but I think it is very important to focus on how you're going to achieve that goal, and I think that is the fundamental problem why people don't actually reach their goals, because you need to make the habits to attain that goal attractive, and you need to make it a process that's enjoyable and that you can take gratification from the whole time. So he often says that you need to make it you do need to make it attractive. So quite an interesting book. I think we'd both highly recommend it, right?
Yeah, no, it's definitely on the top of lists, especially when you become more productive, or if you want to, as I say, start doing things that are, you know, better and remove some of the bad habits.
Yeah. I would have to say that my favorite non-fiction book this year has been Melinda Gates' The Moments of Lift, and I think this is a phenomenal book. It's focused a lot on Melinda's life, but not necessarily as an autobiography. It's more focused on her mindset and what she values as important, and It bases the whole storyline on how to eradicate poverty, and that poverty can be eradicated if more focus is spent on women and girls and making sure that women and girls are educated. So we're not talking about environments that you and I are living in or that she herself is living in. We're talking about the most vulnerable communities, and how the way to break the cycle of poverty is actually to focus on training females, training young girls, training women to be able to earn an income, to become independent. And she explains very well how that would end up breaking the whole cycle of poverty, and also obviously touching on gender inequality and how that is still a challenge in this world, even though it is the year of 2020. But very thought-provoking. It's an incredible read. It's very enlightening, and I would highly recommend it.
The Compound Effect is probably the most useful book I've found.
It's brilliant.
It's really, really awesome, and I think it all boils down to just trying to be just a little bit better in anything that you want to do each day, and not being like, cool, I want to like increase productivity by 200%.
Yeah,
you're like, cool, I just want to like be 1% better today. And it's just the fact that all those little 1% that you do per day are compounded into this sort of
improvement,
long-term outcome, which is so much better. So I found that very interesting.
I think that book I took away a huge amount from as well, because if you think of it from the perspective of compound interest, and if you apply that kind of mentality to your life, you'll be fitter, you'll you'll spend more time on the relationships that mean the most to you. And just by adding in that little bit of efforts every single day, slow and steady wins the race in essence. And that one was a really brilliant book. I think that really stands out. So I actually mentioned that book as well as Atomic Habits in my previous video for key life lessons to learn. So I think those two are definitely worth a read. The next non-fiction that I read this year was Freakonomics. After reading it, I thought it was thoroughly entertaining, and I think it does hold weight. So in the beginning, it talks about the very first chapter. I hope this isn't a spoil, but it talks about how dropping crime rates in America. But there was a linkage between the permission of abortion versus the crime drop. So at first I thought, okay, well, that is quite reaching, but as I read the book, you find that the author expands on the topic, and it's not the only theory that he has for the crime drop. So I thought it was very interesting. It's quite entertaining as well. It touches on a lot of different topics. There's not a recurring theme throughout the book, apart from, I guess, the fact that not everything is what it seems. You need to look a little bit further than what you are reading in the news and what you're being told. You just need to have that little bit of wisdom to dig a little bit further and discover what's really going on in the world around you. Would you agree? You've also read this.
Yeah, so I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I think the whole like sort of topic of behavioral economics or economics applied to like real life non-financial situations, I think is so interesting. And I think if you've ever read Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell,
brilliant,
and if you enjoyed that, then this is a very similar book. It's the same thing. Each chapter is a separate story where they've looked at like statistics or whatever it is, and they've sort of figured out a pattern, and they've tried to argue as to why this occurred. And I think they, just like Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers, it's done the same sort of job, and it's an interesting read. It's not a long read. You can read it in a couple of days if you wanted to, but yeah, very interesting, keep you thoroughly entertained. I'm a non-fiction reader. I don't read much fiction. Don't know why, I just gone off of it. I think it's because nothing could compete with Harry Potter. So
it's true.
So every time you read fiction, it's kind of boring in comparison. Let me chat about this one. I'm a doctor, a junior doctor in training. So this is called War Doctor by David Knott. And this for me was amazing. It's about David Knott. He's a surgeon. Anyways, he's one of those doctors that works for like Doctors Without Borders or all those like field hospital type organizations. And he's gone into many war zones, and either in the war zone or on the outskirts of a war zone, they've set up like a field hospital. and he deals with all the trauma, all the people coming in from explosives or gunshot wounds or all that sort of stuff, that sort of trauma surgery, on the line surgery, saving lives in the most dramatic fashion. And I just thought his stories were amazing.
It's also incredibly noble because you're obviously living in a dangerous setting, and you're obviously living there with a passion of saving others.
If anyone's got like a slight interest in that, this War Doctor was very, very interesting from that point of view.
Alright, if we're going to be talking about wars, then I think I'll switch my next book that I'm going to speak about. If you've been following, you know that I'm a lawyer, so while you've picked the medical side of war, I've picked up the legal side of war. And this book by Philip Sands, it's called East West Street. It is phenomenal. I have never read anything like this. I don't believe that another book like this actually exists. It talks about the Second World War, and it talks about the very beginning of the principles of genocide and crimes against humanity, and it talks about the two professors that came up with these theories that are obviously now international war crimes. And the book is so immaculately written because it weaves between Philip Sands' own family line and his own story. And Philip Sands, the author, he is also a legal professor. I think he's at Cambridge, and he weaves in his own family line of being Jewish and being raised in an area, or his family having come from an area where the Jews were completely annihilated, and the story that also comes about at the time when the professors were writing these theories of genocide and crimes against humanity. So you've got this storyline along with the developments in law and in history, really, leading up to the Nuremberg Tribunal, and now for it to be illegal to target groups of people or groups of cultures or groups of religion and whatnot. So the story is beautifully written. It's not a textbook by any sense of the means. It goes into a little bit of the history of a couple people's stories, and it's just, I don't know, I think this is completely unique, and you can see I've tagged it, I've highlighted throughout it. It's beautiful, I love it, I highly recommend it. I know this is going to be extremely niche and not everyone's going to enjoy this. I don't know if you would enjoy this, but for somebody that has perhaps got an interest in, I don't know, Second World War, perhaps if you've got an interest in Nuremberg Tribunal, and most definitely if you've got an interest in international law, this one is, it's outstanding.
Yes, if we're talking about World War, it's funny how we've actually got some themes going here. But this is a book that Leanne's dad and sister, I think, bought me for Christmas. It's called A Battle of Wits. It's a difficult read, and the reason being is that the author has done such a good job touching on all the history as well as all the details involved in all the code breaking during the World War II. You know, if you're into computers or if you're into IT, if you're into history, this will tick all of the boxes for you. And he goes into such detail. I mean, so I did maths at university, and even I was like, wow, this is way beyond what I've even seen or heard of. Just the way that they used to, you know, break codes, like the fact that they didn't have computers, so things were done by hand. They were done with like you know, analog machines. There's nothing digital. They had like computers, you want to call it a computer, but the size of like a warehouse, trying to break down these codes. And all in all, it was because of the code breaking, and this is, you know, what the Allied forces have said, is because of their code breaking that they actually won the war.
The way that you did describe it to me was similar to Imitation Game, that incredible movie with Keira Knightley, and I forget the other actors. I know they were all brilliant, all about the code breaking that they did there.
Yeah, about the
brilliant mathematicians they were, and
yeah, the Enigma machine. So yeah, it's actually, if you enjoyed the Imitation Game, this is the Imitation Game, but with a lot more detail. I'm
going to regress completely, and I'm about I think 20 years late to this party, but I picked up The Magician's Nephew. I have never read it before. I think we read, or I'm pretty sure we read The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe for a school read, and I loved it, but I didn't actually realize that it was a whole series. So I picked up The Magician's Nephew and I read it this past week. It was so sweet. I think it took 2 days to read. It was so quick. Obviously it's a child's book, but it's a beautiful story, and I really enjoyed it. So that was a nice quick read. So I've got 2 books that I'm going to line up together here on my Kindle because they're very similar in the fact that they are probably on the fantasy spectrum. I've got The Starless See by Erin Morgenstern, and I mean, this is a very popular book. I know everybody says that it's not a patch on night circus, so I'm quite happy that I started with The Starless See, and it blew me away. I thought it was so beautiful. I read it so slowly so that I could just take in each sentence, each concept, each metaphor. It was just beautifully written. So if people are such harsh critics on that book, then I know that The Night Circus is going to just blow me out the water, so I'm very excited for that. It was such an interesting perspective to read from a student who's busy studying video games, how to develop video games. So in essence, he's already in the field of storytelling, albeit a different way of storytelling, and he stumbles across this door, and he goes through this magical door into this area beneath the ground that's got old tunnels and ancient libraries filled with beautiful books, and it just seems endless. And there's a sea made of honey, and there's a whole adventure to go with the story of going into this underground, like sanctum of all these precious stories and preserving these precious stories. So I thought it was so beautiful for that reason, and I'm going to link another book with that because I read it. It just so happened directly after reading The Starless Sea, and that is called The 10,000 Laws of January, which is also seemingly a popular read. It's by Alex E. Harrow, and also has to do with doors and going through doors, and these doors they transport you to different worlds. So there's the daughter of one world that is brought up in our worlds, and she doesn't really understand certain things. It's almost like the persona of somebody who's been adopted, but you know there's something else going on, but you're not quite sure what it is, and you just feel a little bit lost. And then she goes on this coming of age story where she travels through these different doors and these different worlds with all their different challenges and their different their different problems, and then ultimately she finds the purpose for all these doors, and it's a really beautiful coming of age story. So I know that both of them are kind of adventure fantasy stories going through doors, but they are different, and they both are incredibly beautiful in their own right. So those two I would highly recommend. I love them. Absolutely love both of those.
I think the last book I want to talk about is Tobacco Wars. So this is actually a South African book written by a South African guy. So this guy that wrote this book used to work for SARS, which is the South African Revenue Service. So he just talks about how much money is being made on the illicit cigarette trade. So in other words, where cigarettes are illegally brought into the country without tax being paid on those cigarettes. And he, according to him, it's like the government's losing out on like 10 billion rand a year because of these people that bring in illegal cigarettes. I think it's quite interesting because now during the COVID lockdown, obviously tobacco is banned. Yeah,
if you're not from South Africa, there's no permitted sales on cigarettes at the moment.
Yeah, so smoking cigarettes is illegal. You're not meant to be selling cigarettes. So people are still acquiring the cigarettes, and they're doing so by buying illegal cigarettes. And I think that's why that book is quite relevant now, is all these illegal sales that are being made now. The government is missing out on the tax revenue, and indirectly that means we as South Africans are missing out on a huge amount of revenue that the government could be making off those sales. But yeah, interesting. It's a good read.
It's very interesting. And you read that before lockdown. You read that long before lockdown.
Yeah, so I read that in January, not knowing what was going to happen. The South African Revenue Service had a task force, and how they used to try like infiltrate like illegal cigarettes. It's like spy games. It's like James Bond, like all mixed together.
Oh,
So
really?
it's quite interesting from a South African perspective, and obviously now during lockdown, it's more relevant. So yeah, definitely something to read if you've got any interest in it.
What are you currently reading?
So I'm currently reading a book called Operation Lock. It's about the rhino poaching in Africa, and how they set up like a whole task force to actually start like hunting poachers, which I know it's maybe against human rights, but I'm very for that. You know, like I'm definitely in favor of the animals in this instance.
Yeah. I think many people are. I think we're huge animal lovers.
Yeah. So I'm busy reading that now, and then I've got 2 books sitting on my bedside table. So I read a book called Sapiens.
Wildly popular book.
Wildly popular. It's by, his name's like Yuval.
Yeah, you've got the sequel there.
Something. So Sapiens, very interesting. Talks about like human history. He's actually written another 2 books. So those are sitting on my bedside table waiting for me to read. And yourself, what have you got planned?
I've started reading a book. I've made huge progress even this weekend on it. It's called The Witch of Willow Hall by Hester Fox. I'm not quite sure what I think of it yet. It seems very like Pride and Prejudice at the beginning, but apparently it's incredible, so I'll just continue with it and see how we go. I also want to read Night Circus, obviously. Anyway, I hope that you have enjoyed our husband and wife book discussion. I hope you've enjoyed it. So thank you so much for joining me, love.
Pleasure, man.
And maybe we'll do this soon, depending on whether you like this or not. We could do a roundup at the end of the year. So let us know. Leave a comment down below. Please subscribe and let us know what your favorite book of the year so far has been. Thank you for watching. Bye.
Cheers.